All right, what is going on, everyone? Welcome to the Angelo Carlos podcast. We have my friend Joey here, who is actually a software engineer at Google. One of the coolest guys I've met. He's going to go over his whole career and how he went from mechanical engineering to software engineering. So very excited to kind of learn about that process. Joey's actually based in the Bay Area at Google. So really excited to pick your brain, Joey, and welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today, man?
I'm good. I'm good. How about yourself?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. I know you said you're kind of working. How was the food today at Google? Anything good today for lunch?
Yeah, actually, funny enough, I actually came into the office after lunch, so I should have came earlier for the free food, but yeah. Sometimes I'm too lazy. I'll go into the office later, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. Sometimes you just go a little later. And I know 6:30 they kind of have dinner. And the SFO office has like the best food. Everything's all plated too, right? So I think you should be good to go, right? And you get to go.
I don't know if it's the best. Yeah, I don't know. It's okay. It's all right.
All good. Where's your favorite food at Google, by the way? Before we start the pod, where are you like?
I'm not sure actually. I've mostly eaten in around the SFO camp, built offices. But I heard there's some pretty unique stuff in South Bay, like the ones where like it's a sit down restaurant basically. Yeah, so I haven't tried those. Yeah.
Definitely, you should definitely try those. I know Levain, that's like a French restaurant MP, so in Sunnyvale.
Okay.
I think you'll like that. That one's not so much sit down, but definitely the best quality of food I think I've had there. So you're in a good spot, man. Cool. But yeah, I appreciate you joining the podcast, my friend. We're going to jump right into it. Joey's going to go over his experience as an engineer. And first, we're going to talk about kind of his background, how he got into everything. So why don't you tell us about yourself, Joey? Where did you go to undergrad? Did you do any internships or your time in undergrad? Feel free to take the stage, my friend.
Sure, yeah. So as a background, I did mechanical engineering as my undergrad degree. Well, the first undergrad degree. I sort of just fell into engineering. My parents kind of wanted me to study science or something, but that's a path to to go to like medicine or something. Then my dad was a doctor, but like I knew like that wasn't really for me, and I kind of like to build things and stuff. So, I just decided to do engineering. And after first year engineering, I had to choose my major, and I decided to go on mechanical engineering because we had access to a machine shop, so where I can fool around and build things and stuff. Maybe not the best reason to choose a major, but there we have it. From there, I did a bunch of internships. Some of them I did well in, some of them I didn't. I remember one of the ones I did, I'll talk about a couple of them. There's one I did where it was in the aerospace industry, and it was the role I worked in was like lean engineering. So like Six Sigma, that kind of things, how to maximize productivity, reduce waste, that kind of thing, hence lean. And from that, I sort of like realized that aerospace is not like that cool. It was, sorry, let me be specific. It was aerospace manufacturing. So manufacturing, they were manufacturing for Boeing or Lockheed Martin or whatever. And I remember senior engineer telling me that they had to change the size of these clearance holes in one of the parts, and it took him like 30 minutes to do that, to change the drawing, change the model, change the drawings and stuff, and took him the rest of the week to get it to talk to Boeing and get it stamped by Boeing.
Yep.
I'm like, yeah, this is not the job for me. It's way too slow. And I did some other internships I did well in, and then I had interest of the aerospace. I had a similar experience with biomedical.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so this was a a place that did they focused on like they did like R&D for stents, like things that doctors, cardiologists put into or cardiac surgeons put into your like veins or arteries to open up clogs and stuff. Yeah. Let me think. It was just like a lot of process for like everything, and it's important. The process is really important because you're doing stuff like we weren't putting things into humans yet, but eventually we're putting things into animals and eventually into humans. So like everything needs to be like very meticulous, right? And like that was just not. It was just like not it for me. I think I'm like the opposite of a detail-oriented person.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Let me think here. And after that, at some point later on, I graduated and worked as a mechanical engineer in in sawmill industry. So they designed and produced sawmill machines for sawmills. So basically, think of a processing, like a huge processing plant where you basically put in like trees, like actual like logs, and then comes out like wood planks come out.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So these are like gigantic like think little factories basically.
Yeah. Were all these internships in Canada or here? Fun fact: Joey's actually from Canada, and you went to UBC, correct?
Oh right, yes, right. I forgot to mention that. Yeah, I grew up mostly in Canada. I was born in Taiwan, but mostly grew up in Canada, and then went to University of British Columbia.
Oh, that's pretty cool. A lot of engineers at Google I've met a lot of them are from Canada, UBC or Waterloo.
Yeah, probably mostly Waterloo.
Yeah, a lot of Waterloo people. It's so smart. It's so cool. But it's cool. I didn't know you're from Taiwan too. I know the whole AI thing, especially with NVIDIA, huge factories out in Taiwan. That's kind of where the huge focus is right now.
Right.
That's pretty cool. Your internships in college, they were all kind of on the mechanical engineering side.
Right.
I remember when I was at Google X, I was working on the aerospace side of things as well.
Okay.
Talking about Boeing and how long it would take. I agree, because a lot of our hardware that we were working on was also aerospace involved at X, of course, like proprietary. But it does take a very, very long time for aerospace to kind of move and go forward. And I can sense you want that more of a kind of quick turnaround time with launching products that people will use the entire world. So can you talk about that? You mentioned a lot of your mechanical side, moving to software side. How did you learn the software side of things?
Yeah. Okay. So I'll talk about how or why I transitioned to software. So I was working my mechanical engineering job, the full-time job in the sawmill industry, and like it was just like not it for me. There's like a lot of. It was a small company, very very traditional, let's say. Like the culture was just like also not very healthy. There's all like there was only 10 engineers, and everyone's like most of them were like 50 plus, but there was just a lot of 50 plus, and there was just a lot of office politics. People would just like talk behind each other's back all the time, and like I felt, even though it was a salary job, I guess because it is very traditional, it was like, you had to be in a seat like from like 8 o'clock to like 4:30, not like the flexible work hours in tech. And there was a lot of like finger pointing when things happen or stuff, whereas in tech, it's more about how do you prevent, like prevention, as opposed to assigning blame, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So I got fired from that job.
At least you keep me 100. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Very upfront. And went home. I told my parents, and I mulled over it for like a few days, and then I told them, hey, you know what? I think I'm going to go back to school for computer science.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, they're like, WTF? It's not like 5-6 years in school doing internships and all that, and you're like, you don't work a job. You work a job like less than a year, and you're gonna go back to school again. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
So they were supportive. Yeah, it's not that we're supportive. It's like, oh, okay, well, we'll house you, kind of support.
Yeah,
which is nice, right? It's like it's good, So I'm grateful for that. They definitely questioned the decision at that time. There's a joke I tell my friends, well, tell people I meet, which was that when I used to be a mechanical engineer, I got fired from a job. My what is it? My parents thought it was a fuck up, right? Mm-hmm. And now that I got into Google, my parents are proud of me, and only my manager knows I'm a fuck
up. That's so true, dude. I'm proud of you, man. That's awesome.
What I decided wasn't for me. I went back to school for CS, and I realized I did a lot of thinking. I realized that why I like mechanical engineering as a student, but maybe not so much in the industry, as well as why I like programming and software engineering. A few of the courses I really enjoyed it when I was a mechanical engineering student was the programming courses. I didn't know why, and as you remember earlier, I mentioned that I really like being in a machine shop and building things. So basically, I like building things. I like to design things, build things, test things. That iteration, right? And I realized that as someone working in the industry, you don't really get to do that. Like 95% jobs, you're not doing that. Maybe the few percent where you're doing like true R&D, you get to do that. And also, let me think, what else is there? And also in traditional engineering, you're not just mechanical engineering, right? Just any sort of engineering that's not tech. You're not inventing new things, right? Like how many example is like how many different types of like door handles have you seen on a car? Maybe like the Tesla is a bit different, but like all the other ones, they were kind of the same, right? All the same. Yeah. They're obviously the detail in the tiny details in the design are different, right? But like functionally, they're all the same. So there's not really any real innovation involved for most jobs. You're just like changing some existing drawing to make it suit the new customer or whatever, right? So I think that's a big part. And also the thing with being not being detail oriented most of the time in software, you get to like test your program a bunch of times, and there's like different pipelines, right? You have your local environment, you have development environment, staging, and then after a while it gets to production. Whereas like you're only going to build a bridge once. Well, fingers crossed once. There have been historically there have been bridges that collapse due to poor engineering calculation. Yeah. So good thing I'm not in the history books. Yeah.
Now you're a really great engineer. Where did you go for your master's in CS? And then do you recommend our viewers, if they want to transition to the software engineering, do you recommend they do a master's, or do you recommend they go to like a boot camp, which is now a popular route?
Right. My school offered a bachelor's degree, second degree bachelor's degree in computer science.
Oh, cool.
So it's for anyone who already has a bachelor's degree in basically anything, doesn't have to be technical. And then it's a 2-year program, or 3 years with like co-op / internships. Yeah. So that's what I did. We also had I'm guessing similar program, but it gives you a master's degree. But it costs like 3 times as much for.
I bet.
Yeah. for probably the same end result in terms of like the jobs you get. In terms of the question regarding your question about whether to do boot camps or schooling, I think it really depends. It seems like the boot camp graduates now are there's basically too many boot camps and too many boot camp graduates now, especially with the tech industry being, right now we're in a recession, and the tech industry being more sensitive to, the state of the economy, I think. So I think if you do boot camp right now, it might not be the best, but if you can go to like, do a 4-year degree, hopefully by the time you finish, the economy will be better. Also, like if you do boot camp right now and you don't get a job, then you're just like sitting on your ass for a while, and it can look weird on your resume.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. Even if you filled in with like some other jobs, that's not like in the industry. But if you finish if you finish your degree and then can get in a few years line your job up that way, then you don't have a resume gap, and maybe that could be better.
Great advice. Yeah, great advice. Yeah, no, agreed. The tech industry is kind of like in this weird recession right now, especially with the advent of AI. A lot of companies are laying off, and then maybe it does look better if you get a master's. However, that I do know that there are a lot of master's degrees, especially in the US, that are around like 1 year, especially if you have a bachelor's already that you can apply to. I got into like one at Vanderbilt for a master's in CS before choosing UCLA. So I've seen that 1 year program to kind of churn you out. You learn your CS and you get out,
Right.
which is an option too. But Joey, like you said, yeah, right. You may have that weird kind of brief stint in your resume where you're not doing much if you don't get a job after school, but don't let that deter you from keeping on applying.
Yeah, for sure.
So why don't we talk about your time at Google? What was the interview process like? What was the application process like when you applied to Google?
Sure. So let me think here. So I applied to Google back in early 2020. I was in my old job at Yelp, and then I switched to I wanted to switch jobs. And let me think here. I think I already had, I think Google is great at reaching out to, potential candidates. So I just found one of the emails where they reached out to me and be like, hey, do you want to give me an interview now? And basically, yeah, of course. I had already previously interviewed with Google and not gotten in once as for internship, and then one after for full time. And so this time around would have been the third time. And so after that, so I talked to a recruiter, and I think if I remember correctly, I did do a straight to a technical phone interview. So that's like a 45-minute phone interview.
And the hiring manager or the recruiter?
This is with like an engineer.
An engineer. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so it's like a regular coding interview. And then after that, within a few days, the recruiter reached out to me and said, "Hey, like you did well. Do you want to do like it on-site, Because at that time, everything is virtual. So my on-sites were also virtual. Yeah. So for the on-site, it was also it basically takes the whole day. It was it was 5 back-to-back interviews. 4 of them being technical, 1 of them being behavioral. That one's pretty, easy. Yeah. And there's a lunch break in there somewhere. One, not exactly that funny, but one thing I found very nice about tech industry is I think people are more forgiving. I think I alluded to this earlier.
Yeah.
So for one of the interviews, so I said 5 in 1 day, right? I actually misread the time.
Oh wow!
And like completely missed it. I just I just no show, right? I just like no show, and then I emailed recruiter and I just like said, I forgot what I said. I said maybe I think I didn't. I forgot whether I said the time or misread the time, or like maybe I BS them. I said, you sent me like the wrong link to. I don't know what.
Yeah,
but I don't think it mattered, right? I think they're pretty lenient and understanding, and they just rescheduled me for something like the next day. But like, this would not have, like fly at all in like a traditional engineering job.
Oh,
Like
agreed.
they're very much about like, you can't make mistakes. Like whereas in tech, it's more about like, okay, well, people are humans. People are going to make mistakes, and how do we make the system better such that it doesn't happen?
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I'm glad there's much more lenient, and I agree, especially kind of being in California, being at Google. There is more humanistic aspect of the job, and especially with the interview, which is really good. So
Right.
Joey kind of touched on something that is really interesting. Google is about 5 or 6 rounds of interviews for both engineering, business, product, whatever it may be. And what happens is during those 5 or 6 rounds, you're going to get interviewed by, I believe the first is the recruiter, and then about 5 people from Google. And that may not be the team you're on, but different teams. And then they'll basically judge you on whether or not you get the role, right? You could be, I believe it's like during interviews, like strong hire, strong no hire.
Right.
And if you get all 5 strong hires, you're instantly kind of pushed into a hiring. You're
Right.
instantly hired. But if you get around 3 or 4 strong hires, you still have to go to a hiring committee. And that is where a lot of Googlers will just basically kind of debate your profile, whether or not they think you're a good fit. And if they pass you on, you'll get hired. So that's kind of where it was there with how Google works. Joey, can you talk about the technical interview process? I know the first interview, right? Because we've interviewed Google recruiters before.
Yep.
And the first round is just usually with the recruiter. They just want to make sure you're a cool person, make sure you know what you're talking about. And then the next few rounds are technical. Can you talk about the technical interview process? Did you get to pick what language you got to code in? How was it like doing it remote?
Sure. Yeah. So let me think here. So like I mentioned, everything's remote. In terms of what programming language, this is something you communicate to your recruiter ahead of time, and then they will internally, they will only pick interviewers that that are comfortable with the language you've picked, basically. Yeah. So for me, I picked Python. Yeah, it's like very, it's good for interviewing. Yeah. I don't feel like it's a good language for like production code though, because I previously worked at Yelp, which was a Python shop, and
Oh, was it really?
yeah, basically everything was Python, and that made it made life kind of painful because I feel I used to love Python until I joined Yelp. It's a great language for writing, but it's terrible for like reading. And then I went to join Google, and then in my first team, I had to like basically relearn Java, but like it's great for like reading and then knowing what's going on, because everything's like very explicit. But man, is it painful to write?
Yeah, Java's hard.
Yeah.
Python's a lot more straightforward.
Right. So let me think here. Yeah. So for the technical for interviews, most of them are like so four of them were coding. So they usually give you like a warm-up problem, you solve that, and then they sometimes build on it to make it more difficult, or sometimes they ask you a different problem altogether. So usually you expect like one small problem and then one like real problem, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I interviewed for like a junior mid-level loop. But I believe for like if you're interviewing higher level positions, if you have more years of experience, they will usually throw in 1 or 2 system design rounds in there.
Oh, system design.
I didn't have to do that. In terms of the actual coding interviews, it was, like I mentioned, virtual. So I got to use my keyboard. A lot of from talking to my friends, I think a lot of people preferred being able to use some kind of editor they're familiar with, or just like being able to type code. Whereas historically before COVID, the on-sites were in person, so you had to write your code on the whiteboard. I actually prefer that, I think, because on the whiteboard, it's not just about like if you can write the code or not, right? The coding interviews, it's about whether you can solve the problem, or like how you solve a problem. So a lot of times you want to like be able to draw diagrams to like explain your approach first before you write code. And then obviously on a whiteboard it's easier to draw diagrams on a whiteboard. And like interviewers are a lot of times could be more lenient in terms of like small mistakes on the whiteboard. just because they may not even catch it themselves, right?
Yeah.
Because they may chalk it up as handwriting, or just like they sort of gloss over, whereas on a keyboard, on a text editor, it's more obvious when you have some kind of syntax, or some kind of thing where your program won't compile or whatever.
That's great advice. Thank you for sharing that. I know the technical portion is always the biggest kind of fear for most engineers when they go into that interview. With regards to prepping for the interview, how did you prepare for it? Was it a lot of just preparing some LeetCode hard, some LeetCode medium, some easies? What was your prep?
Yeah, let me think here. I think one thing I mostly just the LeetCode, and one thing I like about Google is that it seems like we try to ask questions that haven't been like, that haven't been like used too much, that aren't like, well, I think interviewers try to ask like original-ish questions. Yeah, ish being operative word. And at the same time, though, I think depending on the interviewer, right, they may not ask. I think we try not to ask questions that are overly esoteric.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I think this also depends on the interviewer, as well as where in the which Google Google office / region you're interviewing for. For example, I've heard if you're interviewing for a position in India, they can ask like pretty difficult questions.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
like in Hyderabad.
But at the same time, even if an interviewer asks you a very, very difficult question, then it's not the end of the world, because they ask the same question to everyone, and you just have to be better than the other people, so to speak. It's not like on the objective measure whether you solve the problem or not necessarily.
Got it. So you kind of look at the whole body of work.
Yeah.
In a sense, how you think.
Yeah. If I can add something else quickly.
Of course.
For example, at Facebook, I've heard where recruiters will basically say, "Oh yeah, do like LeetCode hard." Or tag Facebook, because they will ask those questions, and they will ask those hard questions, but like you can prepare for them, right? Like you basically these are the finite list of questions they'll ask. So I think for someone who sucks at studying and remembering things, Google is easier for me, just because like you can more easy to like wing it basically. Whereas for Facebook, if you're good at grinding, that's probably easier. If you're good at like rote memorization per se, but good if you're good at recall, then
I recall.
Or just like studying and stuff, that Facebook's probably easier.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating how each different FAANG company is when it comes to interviewing. I agree. I think when I interviewed at Google, it was a lot more relaxed, a lot more chill. And then at Meta, it was kind of like I felt like I had to like really be on game, on point. So I agree with you 100% there. What's the engineering talent like at Google? How do you feel like you're working with really great engineers? Do you feel like you're always trying to make impact within your current role?
Oh, good question. I definitely feel like I didn't feel like everyone is smarter than me.
Yeah, as how it's gonna be, right?
Better or for worse. No, I mean that's a good thing, I think.
Yeah,
it could be worse. It's probably better that than being, the smartest person in the room, so to speak, because then you just like won't learn anything. Yeah. So yeah, funny thing though, in terms of the engineering talent and whatever. Before I joined Google, look from outside looking in, I always thought Google is this magic palace, or not, or like some, the epitome of engineering excellence or whatever, right? That's just like the impression. But after I joined, I'm like, no, that's just far from the truth. Yeah, so I don't mean that in terms of like the I don't mean that in terms of like the engineering quality or the talent. I mean that in terms of like how well things are documented, or how maintainable is the code and the system we create. But it at the end of the day, at the end of the day, Google is another company. We're trying to ship, right? And you have the deadlines. You can only spend so much time on writing like good code. If you got a deadline, you got to ship. Yeah.
Yep. It's so funny. I completely agree with you. Like even in the business and product side, at Cloud, I think we always talked about how like you're building a plane and you're flying it at the same time. So there's like documentations just everywhere, and you go on Momo trying to find some stuff. You don't know what's going on, and everyone's just trying to figure it out, and everyone has like 1,000 tabs open.
Yeah, so, at least we have a good internal search engine that can, the best really. I mean, I can't imagine what it is like being elsewhere. Here, I heard that Meta is not as good.
Yeah, so it's funny you mentioned that. Yeah, MoMA is, I think, was the best like internal search engine I've used just to find internal stuff.
Right.
And then at Meta, you're using like the Facebook feed to find everything, and you're like, oh man, I gotta find this. I have a meeting right now. So yeah, I think MoMA was the best, and you actually like. G Suite's really good too. So a lot of people use G Suite at Google. So that's always good for an internet company.
Yeah, for sure.
So I want to ask you about what do you currently work on at Google, and what's like any projects you feel like comfortable sharing that you kind of work on?
Yeah.
Any impact?
So I work on the engineering productivity side for Google Cloud databases. So I explain what that means. So, on GCP, or Google Cloud Platform, there's a bunch of products, and there's a bunch of database products. And the one I was working on before, when I first joined Google, was called Firestore. And that's our NoSQL database, which then our competitors are like MongoDB. Our main competitors like MongoDB or something like that. And what does engineering productivity mean? It basically means test infrastructure. So if there are the engineers and engineering teams that work on the feature or product side, and then they have like some feature idea, and they some feature they want to build, they come to us and be like, hey, like we want to build this thing, but we don't have like a good way to test it. And then we work together to solve that problem for them.
That's pretty cool. And what's your day-to-day like with regards to this? Are you kind of in meetings all day? Are you working with several stakeholders? How does it work?
Yeah, I think right now, I guess I have a good mix of meetings and just head down time. I'm not like senior enough to be like, I'm in meetings all day. Oh, I don't get to code anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not there.
You get there.
Maybe one day. I don't know when I get there, but yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
Because I think most engineers do like to code, not necessarily write code, but like to build things, right? And being stuck in meetings all day is probably not what they signed up for originally. So I get a good mix. A lot of my meetings are just like one-on-ones with other people. A lot of times it's just me getting help from them or talk about random stuff. One thing I learned is that it's, especially a big company like Google, it's really good to network. So try to get like recurring one-on-ones with like other engineers, whether it's on your team or on your sister teams. One realization I had pretty recently in the past like half a year is when you have a problem and you find out who to ask, right? You ping them and you schedule something ad hoc to get them to help you, or even if you just message them and then they reply to you, they're like, their mentality is, okay, they're doing you a favor, right? They're taking time away from whatever the hell they're doing to help you. But if you have a regular one-on-one with them, like maybe once a week, every other week, whatever, even if it's you even if you getting help from them every single time, they won't feel that. They would feel like they're just doing their job.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's
something I realized pretty in the past half a year or something.
yeah, that's so funny and yet so true, right?
Yeah. And even though they're committing more of their time to you, it doesn't feel like they're doing a favor.
Because they already established that time.
Exactly. Like, yeah, and you have that. Yeah, and you have that working relationship. So they're familiar with your work, and they can speak to the quality of your work and whatever, right? Even if like I said, even if it's you getting help from them every single time, just because you have like human connection, they'll probably be less inclined to speak poorly of you when it comes to like giving feedback for performance, just because like, oh, he's such a nice guy, like I don't really want to like give him like a bad rating, like in this, like maybe this is not that conscious, right? It could be at least subconscious.
That is so fascinating. You mentioned that. I completely agree, right? The humanistic aspect of working with your coworkers, having that recurring meeting looks really good on you. It can also lead to like a lot of peer bonuses you get at Google, which are really big in the company because you have to give around 7 or 8, right? Or else it just goes away. Joey, can you talk about networking, right? I know this was super big at Google, especially during perf reviewing, during grad. What advice do you have for engineers or people in tech who want to get good perf reviews or do well on grad, which is Google's form of your performance review?
Right. I think there's a bunch of things. I'm not the best person here to ask about this, but I'll try my best because this is something I realize I need to work on more. But obviously, talk to your stakeholders, pick like high impact projects, or not. See, impact or performance doesn't have to be real. It just needs to be perceived.
That's
right.
So fast. Yeah. Continue.
Yeah. I'm not saying like, I'm not saying that as in like, oh, fake your stuff or be a phony or whatever. Just like, I'm saying more like if I guess maybe there's two things, right? If there's a project you feel is going to be higher impact, but then all your stakeholders say, oh, no, I would think we want to do this because of whatever reasons, it's going to take you so much work to convince them otherwise, right? And they probably have good reasons too. So sometimes you just got to give the customers what they want, right? Just and the other aspect is I said perceived performance, right? So a lot of times it's not about the absolute quality of your work; it's about how you present your work. For example, at Google, there's this culture of writing docs, right? Writing documentation,
huge doc culture,
design docs, retrospectives, future planning, whatever, right? And as engineers, we write code, right? But people aren't going to be, when it comes to performance review, people aren't going to be reading a code, right? They're going to be trying to figure out why did you write this code? Like, what's the impact of this code, right? So they're going to be reading docs and be like, okay, first we had this problem, and then we built this feature, and we saw 3x improvement, blah blah blah, right? They want to see that, right? So it's about the perceived impact. I can be the most amazing engineer and write a bunch of code, but if I don't write any docs, people aren't, at least at Google, people aren't going to know what the hell I did, and I'm going to have a poor rating.
It's so fascinating you mentioned that, because I remember my manager always told me perception is reality, even though it might not be fair. Perception is reality, especially at Google. So yes. He was always pushing us to like write more documentation, really advertise your work. I had a friend, it was so crazy. It was like a year and a half. So she came on as L4, got promoted to L6 in about a year and a half or almost 2 years. It was really quick. Yeah. And we kind of like dissected how she did it. She was telling me she would always send emails out to like the broader organization on any updates she had on projects, what she was doing. She kind of created her own newsletter. So the perception was that she's working really hard, but she was working really hard.
Right.
She's having impact because the whole org knows what she's doing. So if you get some high impact projects, create a newsletter so people are up there aware of what you're doing. You're gonna, during perf review, during grad, you're gonna actually, you know, get good reviews, and then you get that excellent rating. You can get promoted much quicker. So
Makes sense,
that's like a little hack you don't really realize unless you're at Google for a while, unless you've been working at a company for a while, how the whole kind of corporate hierarchy kind of works. So Joey, thank you for sharing your advice too, with regards to really networking with your peers and then making sure that they know what you're doing, so that way you get your good reviews and you kind of move up in your career.
For sure.
I'm going to ask you one question with regards to people who want to get a job at Google. What advice do you have for them, whether they're becoming straight up undergrad or whether they're trying to make a career transition to work at Google? Any advice or key tips you have, Joe?
Oh, okay. Let me think here. I think Google is pretty lenient in terms of like who they are willing to interview. At least that used to be the case before, you know, the more recent economic downturn. I would say do enough to, you know, do enough to, you know, build up, you know, somewhat of a resume in terms of like technical experience. I don't know if going to a boot camp itself is enough, but if you went to like a half decent, you know, school for computer science, they'll probably give you a shot, especially if you have like, you know, some minimum internship experience. And then for, you know, after that, you just have to prepare for interview, right? I would just say, do you really code? Yeah. And get good at programming. I'm kind of surprised that, you know, because I was interviewing candidates, and I was surprised by the overall lack of how common it is for candidates to not be able to like write like to solve pretty simple problems or write pretty simple code, and you know, probably a lot of them is just because they're nervous.
Yeah.
But yeah, just be comfortable. And it could be, you know, maybe your technical chops are there, but you just need to have more experience doing mock interviews. Have someone like give you that like pressure of, you know. So practice with friends or something, you know.
What advice do you have for someone who's interviewing at Google to get a strong hire? Like, what makes them stand out?
Hire. Like definitely, you need to be able to solve the problems. So being good at problem solving and and writing good code, but I think also being able to take your time and like explain your thought process and approach like in a very clear manner. I made a mistake when I was first interviewing for Google back doing my I was looking for internship. There's that. I think it's pretty common for candidates to just like freeze because they're nervous or they don't know how to solve the problem, so they just like don't say anything and just, you know. And there's this advice people give is like, oh, just like talk out loud. And I think I took that approach like too literally.
Oh, okay.
I was just like, you know, word spaghetti, right? Yeah, like they probably don't know what the fuck I'm saying. And then mid-sentence, but also blah, blah, blah. Oh, but what if I, you know?
Yeah.
And they probably just don't know what I'm talking about. So I think it's okay if you slow down and just like come up with like some approach. This doesn't have to be the best, and talk through it with your interviewer. Be like, okay, here's some thinking. I'm gonna, you know, because of this, I'm gonna do this and try to blah blah blah, right? And so you want to be as linear as possible in your thought process. It's okay to have a little bit of word spaghetti in the beginning to sort of figure out, you know, where you're, you know, to get your initial grounding. But after that, you want to be more methodical in your explanation.
Okay, that's awesome. No, I appreciate that's great advice, especially for our viewers who are wanting to kind of be in your position to work at Google as a software engineer. Also, in general, for those who are trying to get into that software engineering career, you've done so much with your career with regards to making that transition from mechanical engineering to software engineering and working at, like, I guess the pinnacle right now of what most people see in tech at Google. So I'm very proud of you, my friend. Keep on doing an amazing job. And we always love to end the podcast on one last question. So, Jody,
Sure.
what is one piece of advice you would give to your younger self, whether it be about your life or your career? What advice would that be?
Ooh, okay, let me think about this. If I this is kind of funny. I don't know if there's a right one, but this is one. And it's kind of two. So I'm gonna say the nicer version of it, which is like be a better listener. Like really put aside your ego and like listen to what other people have to say. And the reason why I said this is I sort of got asked a question a long time ago in an interview where the hiring manager asked me, "What is the harshest feedback someone has ever given you?" And the answer I gave them was, when I was in high school, I had a friend that told me, a close friend that told me, "Joey, it doesn't matter if you're right if nobody likes you." and funny enough, I argue with them about that. So,
Man.
yeah, just have less ego. You're not always right. Even if you tend to be right, it's good to have different perspective and try to listen to other people without judgment. And that will not only expand your knowledge or horizon, but also build better relationships and make other feel valued and seen and heard.
That's awesome, brother. I appreciate that. That's some great advice, especially for those who are just kind of in their career or just trying to like look for life advice.
Right.
I appreciate that, Joey.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, man. You're definitely an inspiration. Just seeing where you came from, coming from UBC, going over to do your master's in CS, and then just kind of going through all the bumps in life, and then still ending up at Google and excelling in your role. So, Joey, man, thank you so much for joining the podcast. This is so fun. I had a lot of fun, like laughing with you and just learning what it's like being a software engineer at Google. It's been a great time, my brother. We'll definitely hang out soon when I'm back in the Bay. So with that being said, Jello family, appreciate you guys watching the podcast. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I'll leave Joey's Instagram down below if you want to reach out to him, talk to him. One of the smartest guys I know. And I hope you learned a ton from this podcast. So Jello family, thank you so much. And Joey, you're the man. I appreciate you so much and have an amazing day, guys. Peace.
Thanks for having me.